do good, wear it proudly, and let no man put you down. Find the God within and do the right thing. And I bid you all, you folks who've been in prison like myself, in the street, losing homes, doing all that, I really do. I bid you a very, very Merry Christmas. So I say that as we go on in things, and I'll leave Kathleen behind, and I want to talk about being a priest. She challenged my priesthood. She doesn't know much about Catholics or religion or anything else like that. I thought she might be Catholic. I don't know what. I don't really care, because if she was, she doesn't know her theology. Then she would know all believers are priests. Okay, but that again, it shows her limited understanding of theology or anything like that, if that's what she believes. Okay. And what I like to say is knowing God versus loving God. Okay, Blaise Pascal once said that knowing God and loving God are two different things. Nothing can be further from the truth in my experience, says someone. It is God's nature not to know without love. In fact, the deeper we love and the more that we become to understand God with the heart, the more likely are we to know something about God. Loving, hoping, desiring, these are all things the poets and the hymn writers have sung about for centuries, because they are the essence of knowledge of divine things. With King David, we may ask of God, incline my heart unto thy testimonies, which is Psalms 119, I think, 30. In other words, turn my heart to believe more. That's how it works. I'm not sure I agree with Pascal, okay, because I think God's love, you end up knowing God, not necessarily from your own self, though you may seek God. Knowing God, I believe, comes from God. I think it comes the other way around. It's God's love, however he, she, that, with, I don't know how to explain God. As I said, myth, fantasy, reality, okay. I'm considered Christian mystic, okay. My belief is that God, if you search on your end, God will find you, and you will find God. And that's where I come from, and from the beliefs that I have, that may be different, okay, than others. And talk about going into a cathedral, okay, or a monastery. She said I wasn't a brother. No, I'm no longer a brother. I am the third order. I'm outside. I'm an oblate. Ms. Mitchell, if you know what that means. If I was Franciscan, I would be of the third order. But your ignorance is overwhelming, you know, that you can fool nearly a couple of thousand people with your rants and rage, you know. Thank God for Prozac. Imagine it is the year 1400, and you were visiting Chartres Cathedral for the first time. You've never before seen a faithful reproduction of this truly remarkable structure, which dominates the busy, dirty commercial city and the countryside for miles around. Climbing up the Rue de Bourges on foot, you enter the cathedral itself and find yourself in a cavernous space illuminated by flickering lights and hundreds of candles rebounding off the exquisitely beautiful stained glass windows. Though greatly moved by your surroundings, you do not find it at all difficult to understand or read the cathedral. On the contrary, it is quite clear to you how its wordless communicates the Christian story. In the beauty of monasteries and cathedrals, one can see them if you ever visit. I happen to like the one that's up in Maine. We have some right around here. We have some nice monasteries and stuff like that. And of course, the European monasteries are gorgeous. And the cathedrals in great cities like Rome, like England, are exquisite. Medieval spirituality was both more credulous and more embodied than our own today. For the medieval person, a symbol was an object piece of reality. It was that very thing that represented an image of Christ or the Virgin in the form of an icon. As, you know, this is why I wear this. Okay? The form of or a fresco, an icon, a fresco, or a sculpture was the very porthole to Jesus and Mary. The builders of these first Gothic cathedrals had been taught by philosophers, and one of the philosophers, John Scotus Erigena, one of the finest minds of the early medieval periods, that a piece of stone may only be understood for what it really is. If we see God in it, the materials they used were thus transformed in their hands. The slab of marble forming a high altar of a cathedral would be regarded as the very stones upon which Abraham was willing to offer his son Isaac, or as the place where sacrifices were made in the temple during Jesus' time, or most importantly, Calvary, where Christ offered himself for the salvation of the world. So these symbols really in those days were, for people, were really like being right there, okay? We don't have that today. We lose that today in all the hustle and bustle. You know, that's why I say, somebody said to me, oh, you need to believe in Jesus the way you feel, Ross, Father. And I say, no, I don't care if you believe in a stone.
Yeah.
Stone made by God. A tree, I don't care. Okay? What I care about is that you recognize the spirituality of all things. I care about that in all people. Okay? Now, I didn't care about that years ago. And that's why I say this transformation that has come place through my belief, whether it's real or fantasy, is a good thing for your community, because I was a major predator. As Mitchell says, my friends or who they are or doesn't matter or anything else. Well, my friends and who they are matters to me. Even those who are still in the life and having difficulty, okay? Because they represent people I grew up with, some bad things that I've done, some good things. So they're important to me, okay? You know, so and so when somebody says things like that, that's irritating to me, you know, and it's disparaging, and you know, her libelous was really at a point where, as many have asked me, and even 2 lawyers said that I should sue her. And I said, well, she's got nothing. Well, they said, well, no, but you could stop her from getting on the air and trashing these things. And I said, well, gee whiz, what a silly thing for me to do. You know, Jesus couldn't sue when they said things about him, or any of the leaders. They allowed sick individuals like this to rant and rave. You know, apparently the Prozac doesn't do any good, or whatever the medication she takes doesn't seem to. It does for periods of time. So we just hope that she can get herself
together.
So as we go on, I want to try to enlighten her on how beliefs are, and others of her followers that may be listening and ranting and raving, who say they seem to know me, that they don't have any idea who I am. They don't even know where I live or who lives with me or beside me or other
No,
things.
they don't.
You know, and we don't need food stamps in my house. Thank God. Catholic practice centers on things that can be touched, seen, tasted, and smelled. It's serious, it's sensuous, excuse me. It is serious. It's sensuous and physical. I often wonder how much understanding we lose the farther and farther we get away from sensuous experience of death. Okay? Now, I was just saying about how the real things were and stones and everything and mysticism and come from God. And now it's the thing that happens is we are away from death. You know, mom and dad are put in nursing homes, hidden away, taken care of. They don't live in the house like my grandmother was home. My great-grandmother passed away in the house. We took care of her. Stuff like that, the old way, less and less they do that. Oh, in fact, Bobby, you with my father, you helped with
up in Mass,
up in Massachusetts. You came with us with me on the days we
that we went up,
when we went up with my father. That's our traditional way. At my brother's house, my brother, so we shared those things. Although in the last days, he was removed from the house and went to the hospice. So we get farther and farther away. We move from this sensuous experience of death. We do so much today to hide death, to cover it up once it happens, and to put it out of our thoughts. In the midst of life, we are in death. You're in the midst of death right now. So say ancient Anglican liturgy, which is well put. And remember your death is the best translation of the Latin phrase memento mori. Visual artists have painted many memento mori's images over the century. One famous triptych by Hans Memling is titled Earthly Vanity and Divine Salvation, and hangs in a museum in Strasbourg. In a three-part picture, a beautiful woman stands in the center panel, naked and holding a mirror to see herself as a lovely home and pet dog by her side. Lurking on two sides beside her are a dead body. Once buried, now decomposing, and a devil tormenting humans in hell. Triptychs have a way of telling a story that gets our attention. And sometimes we need a deadly shock of realization in order to see what's real and then to come to life. And that's one of the things that, instead of suing, the reality of showing someone who they are and how you feel about them and stuff like that is a shocking reality. Often I try to analyze the quality of its silence. Is this where God hides from my searching? I have stopped to listen after a few people have gone. To the air recomposing itself for vigil, it has waited like this, since the stones grouped themselves about it. These are the hard ribs of a body that our prayers have failed to animate. Shadows advance from their corners to take possession of places the light held for an hour. The bats resume their business. The uneasiness of the pews ceases. There is no other sound in the darkness but the sounds of a man breathing, testing his faith on emptiness, nailing his questions one by one to an unattained cross. What can I say? talk about a monk friend of mine. When you are here, don't walk around looking for moments of enlightened insight. My monk friend Ambrose once advised me. This is a visit to the monastery. For one thing, we're not that smart, he laughed. Instead, you would walk around the monastery grounds just praying. Sit in the church before Zon, praying, or just shut your mouth for a few days. Listen to the talks given by the retreat master. If you like, just sit. Try your best to stop thinking. What I'm suggesting is much harder than you might think. You'll see. At that point, I felt needed to lighten things up. What about the little old-fashioned scourging? Wouldn't that be easier? Beat me on my back. Yes, well, he smiled. We Trappists aren't much into asceticism anymore. Beating yourself up doesn't do for you what the monks of early centuries thought it would do. In fact, it only confuses things further, he explained, as if he knew whereof he spoke. This is a monk who started out long before the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. He used to sleep on a wooden plank in winter in a mostly unheated dormitory. So here's your ancestral work for this week. You got this? Mm-hmm. Try your best not to be clever or insightful. Try your best not to look in the mirror. If you're lucky, you'll uncover some of your truest self before you leave. My friend, when I read stuff like this, my friend and loving associate, pal, was with me for a lot of years, Father Emmett Jarrett, you know. Wonderful Franciscan, wonderful Franciscan. I truly miss him, and I miss all the things that we shared. Join me Monday for a week of ongoing book reviews of this fascinating new study. This is what my friend said. He was Padre Pio. Italian historian Sergio Lozado writes beautifully. Translation from the Italian is well done, documents his research thoroughly, and mixes contemporary and cultural reference with the tradition of doctrine and hagiographical analysis as he starts his recent book. He cites as recent Italian study that today's Italian venerates Saint Padre Pio more than Francis of Assisi, the Virgin Mary, and even Jesus. All the more reason why this critical biographer is so needed. Okay, we know that Father Pio has fought in the war. Father had stigmatas. It happened in September of 20th, 1918, after a series of setbacks that suffered in the trenches in the war. So there are many people who've challenged the saint, saying that those things he had were made up and not real. And we talk about all this stuff and people like Father Pio because all kinds of people challenge beliefs, okay? And his belief and who he was and his priesthood has all been challenged by a lot of people. Much like Nutso challenged whether I'm a priest or not. And again, I've tried to explain to her that in as nice a way as I could, not letting a lot of my vehement anger show, okay? That spirituality, your belief, your religion belongs to you, as mine belongs to me. And this season, I hope you all know that these are important things. Your spirituality is yours. And anyone who dares judge you